selection. Dan Reeves, as you just heard, indicated a tight end is one of the things on his shopping list, but there are some other things. If it is not Tony Hunter, if they're jogging back and forth now, who would it be otherwise?
I can just see their war room. Joe Collier, their defensive coach, pleading for Billy Ray Smith, saying, please, we've got to have that outside or inside linebacker. And Reeves saying, well, I like Tony Hunter, the offense and defense having a war out there.
And there's also thinking that Chris Hinton of Northwestern could be the choice, because there's the possibility that Claudie Miner might retire for the second time like he almost did last year. But so there's three solid choices that you could make a good case for Denver making, or they might, again, like we talked earlier, might even be working out a trade possibly with Baltimore to get John Elway. So this really holds the key to the rest of the draft right now, what Denver does.
The 1982 draft was recognized as an offensive draft. This draft also as an offensive draft, a very strong draft, even before the USFL depleted some 10% or so of the players that might be selected in the first few rounds, and that's the way it's panned out so far. Offensive players.
I think you won't find a defensive player drafted until Billy Ray Smith, and then it might be only 2 in the first 10 or 11. The next one will be Terry Kennard. So you might go 8 or 9 offensive drafts with only 2 defensive.
Possibility of a quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Is that a real possibility at this juncture?
Except for Elway, I don't think that they have the other quarterbacks like Eason or Todd Blackledge. Jim Kelly, of course, is in there too, and Dan Marino. But I don't think they have any of those quarterbacks rated that high to use a fourth pick on. But you just never know.
That would mean that Reeves was giving up on Mark Herman awful quick, and that was his choice. That wouldn't look too good.
Billy Ray Smith is an individual who we've talked about here and who may very well be the first defensive player selected. We talked to Billy Ray and asked him if he had any feelings about where he would want to play.
Probably Dallas area. I'd like to play for Dallas, but like I said before, any team that would invested the confidence in me to draft me, I'd play my heart out for him.
Say he might be a little bit too slow, might be a little bit too small, but all he does is do everything perfectly, and he's a winner.
Denver's now writing their pick. Remember, there was also a lot of talk about Dallas wanting Billy Ray Smith and offering a lot of players to Denver. Johnson was mentioned. Jay Saldi was mentioned. Glenn Carano was mentioned. Of course, Reeves was once an assistant with Dallas. So we're going to find out momentarily what happens, but there are a lot of possibilities.
Dan Reeves is on the last year of his contract, too, and he's got to produce.
Don Weiss has the card. The commissioner, Bill Harpole, and Mike Novica have handed the selection of the Denver Broncos to Commissioner Rozelle.
The Denver Broncos select on the 4th choice in the first round, guard, Chris Hinton of Northwestern. Next up, San Diego.
We now wait on the San Diego Chargers. Chris Hinton, who was a tackle but is projected as a great pulling guard in the professional ranks, the selectee of the Denver Broncos. We're waiting on San Diego. ESPN's live and continuous coverage. 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft will continue after these messages. Updating you on the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft, the San Diego Chargers have just selected Billy Ray Smith, the linebacker from Arkansas. So the Chargers go for some defense, and it looks like Bass wins the battle of the first pick for San Diego.
Yeah, it looks like also Chicago's coming up, and we were just talking, maybe they've changed their thinking now and they want Tony Hunter. I would say it's Hunter, Jimbo Covert, or Bruce Matthews.
I had predicted Matthews. I think Hunter now becomes a real key in the draft. Could something happen almost like Kellen Winslow last year, where everyone had him, not last year, a few years ago, when everyone had him going on the 3rd pick to Cincinnati. The Bengals took Jack Thompson, and Winslow sailed through to almost the middle of the first round. So there's a thought the Giants might take Hunter. So it's really going to be interesting to see where Hunter does wind up.
Billy Ray Smith selected by the San Diego Chargers. Let's go to Greg Wyatt and get an update on what's transpiring on the West Coast as we continue our coverage of the 1983 National Football League Collegiate Draft.
George, it's very interesting. The John Elway Bowl has turned into a George Steinbrenner Bowl. And believe it or not, just a few picks into the National Football League draft, George Steinbrenner has made his mark in the National Football League because Marvin Demoff, the agent for Elway, has just told me via the telephone that John Elway has chosen baseball since the Baltimore Colts picked him. So John Elway will make the announcement at 2 p.m. our time, which is 5 o'clock Eastern time, at the Hyatt in San Jose, California, which is right near his home. So John Elway has chosen the Yankees over the National Football League, and that is it from here in Los Angeles.
don't believe that.
Well, we'll see what happens. That report from Greg Wyatt. Billy Ray Smith just selected by San Diego. Initial reaction?
Good pick by San Diego. I thought, Bob, that there are many worse things they could do than to have the 5th, 20th, and 22nd pick overall. Billy Ray Smith, their first pick, I think, in numbers 20 and 22. One of them, if they're lucky enough, Gary Anderson, the scat-back Bruce Harper-type receiver from Arkansas, if he's left. And the other one, probably the second-rated cornerback, Leonard Smith, a guy who I've been told is the best man-to-man covering cornerback in the draft, although Tim Lewis of Pitt is expected to go earlier. So I think San Diego keeping Fouts, going with Billy Ray Smith and a cornerback, and maybe something to jazz up the offense. I think it's a good move. They're so close to the Super Bowl that I don't think that they should wait anymore.
Next up is Chicago. Now, we've heard some talk that maybe the Bears would be courted by the L.A. Raiders, Bud, possibly because the Raiders might want to make a move up, because right now they're selecting rather deep in the first round. If they could select next, they'd be the 6th team, and maybe they had at one point been thought to be in the John Elway Bowl, as it's been called. Maybe this is the time for them to make a move.
A tight end is always an invaluable commodity. I don't think we should just gloss over Hinton's choice. That second one of Billy Ray Smith came so rapidly. Hinton's a boy who was a tight end. He has been a linebacker. He's 264. He can run. And Denver's got, I think, a all-pro almost for sure, who's got 12 or 15 years ahead of him. And that's a priceless commodity to have on your football team.
Okay, we are waiting on the Bears right now. They will be selecting next number 6 in the first round. Then comes Kansas City, to be followed by Philadelphia. And Houston will be making the number 9 selection by virtue of that trade recently with Seattle. And Seattle, with the pick for which they traded up, selected Kurt Warner. We do have on the phone, I understand he's not on the phone currently, but let's talk about Chris Hinton, who has been the selection of Denver today. And here's a young man who did not play the offensive line until his last year. He played tight end, he played linebacker, but his coach had to lobby to get him listed on some All-American ballots beginning of the season. 4-7 across the board in our scouting report. We'll get a good look at what he can do in the line.
The speed and mobility that he possesses are the unusual qualities for someone with his size and strength.
What about the switch in positions, having only 1 full year at that position, playing tackle in college after only 1 year, now being projected as a pro guard? This young man is going to be all over the board.
If you're an athlete and a football player, it just doesn't make much difference.
Hinton selected by Denver, the number 4 overall selection. It's a very good year for offensive linemen, and Chris Hinton, obviously, in the selection of the eyes of the people that have picked so far, is the best man available. We're waiting for Chicago to be followed by Kansas City. John Elway has been selected by Baltimore. We have not had a trade yet in this draft. Let's get back to the Sheraton in New York.
Thanks, Bob. Let's take another step further in the Elway situation. I think we're seeing more of a chess match than any kind of a definitive statement made by anybody.
Squeeze play. It's a Demoff and Al Davis squeeze play on Baltimore. Now they think, Demoff came in with the announcement quickly. Maybe they can panic him into making a trade that they don't want to make. And I see the hand of Al Davis behind this, Al being very good friends with Marvin Demoff. He just came up with that baseball announcement too quickly, and I think they want to stampede Baltimore into a quick trade.
I have to agree. Either the Raiders are going to try to trade up with Chicago and get the pick now that Chicago is supposed to be taking, or San Diego remains in the picture. They still have 2 number 1 picks left, perhaps New England. It wouldn't be surprising to see the Colts, with the squeeze being put on them, then turn around and trade Elway's rights to someone else and let them worry about it, but someone else other than the Raiders. So there's still a lot of intrigue left in this whole situation.
They're trying to get the price down. Baltimore's, obviously, unless they read it as a lie, they've got to trade him or eat the pick. And then there'll be a few jobs on the line in that one.
And in any case, the way the situation stands at this particular hour, John Elway has been selected by the Baltimore Colts. In case you joined us late, the late report we have from the West Coast is that Elway has selected baseball over football. But again, as we're discussing now, this may not be the end of the story. Before this day is over, we may very well find out exactly what direction John Elway will be going in. We should point out the fact that it's been no secret from the beginning the dollar figures have been more advantageous for Elway from a baseball perspective as opposed to his possible football contract. But there are a lot of other intangibles that will go into the Elway decision, so we'll be keeping up on that during the course of this entire NFL draft. Let's go back to Sal Marciano now, who has more reaction on this day number 1 of a one-day draft this year in the NFL. Sal.
George, the reaction here at the Baltimore Colts table is short and sweet. No comment from Dave Filer and John Scott, the representative of the Colts here in New York. I spoke with Commissioner Pete Rozelle, and the NFL commissioner said he will reserve comment until after John Elway's news conference this afternoon. Now back to George.
Okay, thank you, Sal. And standing by at our ESPN studios, Bob Lee and company are prepared to keep us up to date on what else is transpiring as we look at some of the athletes who have gone already. For instance, Billy Ray Smith. And before we go, we got Chicago now just working on their table. Let's stay with it for just a couple of moments and see what transpires, because they are ready to take their pick. The Bears with the first of 2 picks. Don Weiss has the card. He'll go up to the commissioner and get the first pick of 2. The second would be from Tampa Bay later in this first round. The Bears with 2 number 1 picks in the first round. Here's the commissioner.
Trade. That's a trade card. I can see by the expression on his face.
The Chicago Bears. Bears pick on the first round. Jimbo Covert, tackle, Pittsburgh. Next up, Kansas City.
Okay, 2 tackles, 2 big tackles have gone so far in this first round. Hitting from Northwestern, Jimbo Covert, one of the strongest offensive tackles ever to play the college game from the University of Pittsburgh. Now goes to the Chicago Bears. We'll be back with more of ESPN's live and continuous coverage of the draft after these messages.
Along with Chris Berman and Bud Wilkinson, Bob Lee, as we continue our live coverage for the 4th consecutive year of the National Football League Collegiate Selection. We have live on the telephone Chris Hinton out of Northwestern, who has been the number 4 selection today of Denver. Number 4 overall in the first round of Denver. Congratulations, Chris. Were you expecting to go to Denver? Or do you think possibly the Bears might take you closer to home than Northwestern?
Lately, just like the past week or so, I was starting to hear Denver, but up until then, I thought Chicago all the way. And I think Denver took all of their 15 minutes to make their choice. So I kind of thought they might pick someone else.
Chris, you've really struck a great blow for the future of Northwestern football. A lot of people said, why go to Northwestern when you'll never get any recognition? And I'd like to congratulate you. What's your feeling about that?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Chris, you've played tight end, you've played linebacker, you played tackle your senior year. You were announced at the draft as a guard. Where would you prefer to play? Which position, tackle or guard in the pros, or does it really matter at this point?
I have no preferences. I want to play professional football.
Okay, and you're certainly going to do that because you're the top offensive lineman selected in a very deep year for offensive linemen. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Chris Hinton live on the telephone out of Northwestern at 6'4", 245, and Billy Ray Smith was selected just after Chris by San Diego, projected as a linebacker out of Arkansas. And Billy Ray Smith, and we talked about, and Paul and Howard talked about the battle that must have been going on in San Diego. Tom Bass, defensive coordinator, winning out a scouting report that shows him grading out to a 19-0 on a 5-point system. His coverage takes a bit of a licking here, but of course strength, quickness, and pursuit are good numbers for Billy Ray Smith.
And rushing the passer is a vital thing. I don't think anybody ever questioned the ability of San Diego to move the football. It's just been phenomenal, the skill of their offense. If they can build a defense that can stand in there and get the ball relatively quickly, then they're real Super Bowl contenders.
He was a roving end for Arkansas, kind of a disruptive force on the field. So Billy Ray Smith, the selection. Kansas City is up. Let's get back to the Sheridan in New York City for their pick.
Here's the commissioner.
Kansas City, first choice in the first round. Quarterback, Todd Blackledge, Penn State. Next up, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia Eagles will be up next, and now very clearly this settles the question: will it be Fuller or will it be Kenny or will it be a trade for Carano? It will be neither of those three. And I think also too you have to consider the fact most of the scouts realize that Blackledge may take a year or two before he gets to the point of being ready to step in, because he doesn't come from a pure professional style backfield with the Nittany Lions. But does this surprise you?
Well, it surprised me because they said Eason. I should have known that they were blowing smoke. They said Eason, and then they said that Kelly didn't look good to them, and they were telling the truth on that one. So, you know, they were 1 for 2 when telling the truth, and you just have trouble reading it.
Surprise to you?
That's the main surprise, that it was Blackledge, and most scouts felt that Eason and Jim Kelly perhaps were the number 2, 3 quarterback, and Kansas City obviously had Blackledge as their number 2, and they had wanted to get some offensive line help. Perhaps they think that'll still be available on the second round. And so it's just another draft like they usually go.
Meanwhile, Tony